Good evening, all. Welcome to the 12th episode of Let's Talk Engineering, jointly organized by Civilianz and Swadeshi Science Movement. In today's session, we will be discussing about a topic which is very relevant in the present scenario: water conservation, traditional wisdom, and new generation perspectives. And to address about this topic, we have a very special chief guest with us today, a renowned personality in the field of water resource management and drinking water security, Engineer Sudhindra Sharma sir, advisor, water resource management, also a former national nodal officer, National Drinking Water Security Pilot Projects, Government of India, which is Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation. On behalf of Civilianz family and all those who have gathered here, I extend a warm welcome to our esteemed chief guest, Engineer Sudhindra Sharma sir. Welcome to the function, sir. I would also like to welcome Engineer Ravindranath TC sir, who is a former Chief Engineer, Kerala Police Housing and Construction Corporation Limited, to the function. We welcome you, sir, to this session. We also have with us Dr. Gopalakrishna R. IS sir, Coordinator, Northern Emirates of UAE, Science India Forum and Swadeshi Science Movement, Trivandrum. A warm welcome to you, sir. We also have with us Professor Jay Kumari V, Indian Society for Technical Education, Kerala, who is also a retired professor and HOD of Civil Engineering Department, Government Engineering College, Thrissur. Welcome to the session, ma'am. Also, we have Dr. Pavitran, member Energy Conservation Society, with us today. A warm welcome to you, sir. We also have Engineer V. Vijay Kumar, sir, Deputy C, former Deputy C, retired Kerala PWD, and also State Executive Committee member, Association of Engineers, Kerala. Welcome to the session, sir. And last but not the least, I would like to welcome all the participants to this session. Moving on, first of all, I would like to welcome Engineer Ravindranath TC sir, former Chief Engineer, Kerala Police Housing and Construction Corporation Limited, for the presidential address. Please, sir.
Welcome to one and all of the participants and distinguished guests for the proud 12th episode of monthly webinar on Let's Talk Engineering series organized by Swadeshi Science Movement and Civilianz in association with Association of Engineers Kerala, one of the biggest organizations of the engineering sector involving serving and retired senior engineers of Kerala PWD, Kerala Irrigation Department, and Kerala LSGD departments, Energy Conservation Society, Kerala Self-Financing Engineering College Management Association, and Indian Society for Technical Education. Today, as in the welcome speech, as is clear, we have a prominent personality with us to deliver an authenticated talk on water conservation, traditional wisdom, and new generation practice. Water is said to be the life of Earth. Every human beings, animals, birds, and plants on Earth live on water for survival. Water is becoming a scarce commodity in Earth. Though there is plenty of water in Earth, 97% of the water available on Earth is saline, and only 3% remains as useful water. In a human body, water forms around 60% on an average. Of course, it varies with the sex and age, because with aging it may get reduced. With sex, females percentage may vary like that. So, with the passage of time, with the increased population, the water demand is getting increased day by day. So, preserving, controlling, and managing the water resources has become an inevitable need of the hour. Water conservation, in other words, is a practice of using water efficiently to reduce unnecessary water usages. Rather, by water conservation, it means a preservation, control, and management of water resources. Water conservation ideas and technologies are not new to our country, Bharat. It is seen practiced from time immemorial. The excellent water harvesting and drainage systems found in the cities of Indus Valley civilization are masterpieces of our ancient culture. And they're so prominent that even today, many of the harvesting structures are built based on their design or ideology. In various parts of India, different names like ponds, Jalara, Tala, Bivari, Tanka, Ahar points, etc., are all evident examples of our masterminds in our water conservation. In Kerala, we can see many ponds locally known as kulams on the upstream of every ela. Ela means or the agricultural extent of agricultural lands. It's upstream of the land and by the side of the drainage system to collect the stormwater and to use it in the downstream ela during summer. In our old ancient Arthashastra written by Chanakya, there is clear mention of irrigation water using harvesting system. As you know, Chanakya was a prime minister of King Chandragupta Maurya. All the water belonged to the king. And Chanakya decrees allowed single authority to the govern water. In Kerala, we now maybe experience the difficulty in managing the water by different organizations like irrigation department, water authority, even in the irrigation department, minor irrigation, major irrigation, then local self-government department, etc. So at that time itself, there were only one authority to govern the water. Chanakya also acknowledged the highly seasonal nature of Indian water, as is clear from his pricing. Chanakya's water prices were not paid in cash. It was paid in either through labor or through commodities or share of crops. Chanakya further addressed the importance of progressive pricing of water. Though everyone was charged, though everyone was paid a water price, the wealthy farmers who were capable enough to transport the water through some mechanical means or through bullock carts, they were being charged a higher rate than the normal rate. They now coming in Singaverapura near Allahabad. We had a very sophisticated water harvesting system that was used, which used the slope of the terrain to store flood water to River Ganga. Then Chola King, in coming back to 200 AD, or Chola King Karikala had built an extensive anicut named Kallanai. Kallanai means Ana means a dam built with stones. Kallanai across River Kaveri to divert water for irrigation to Tanjavur areas, which still exists. Thus, drawing upon centuries of experience, India contributed to build structures to catch, to hold, and to store monsoon stormwater for the dry seasons to come. The interesting fact is that many such structures are still in use and works very efficiently. Before concluding, let me point out few words on practicing water conservation in our day-to-day life also, which are very simple and easy to remember. In the day-to-day life, we have seen many people who keeps the tap open during brushing the teeth, then washing the face, then while shaving, and also keeps the shower open during the entire bathing. Can't we limit such extra usages of water by keeping the tap closed either during the brushing time, either soaping time, during bathing, and so on. In kitchen also, many used to wash many of the dishes by keeping the tap open. So many of the water is seen wasted. We can of course keep it stored in a bucket or vessel and use it as and when necessary. Similarly, reusages of water from our kitchen sinks, wash basins, etc., for gardening and toileting purposes can also reduce the water usage to extensive limit. Avoiding leakages in our water supply systems, using energy efficient appliances for shower, flush tanks, etc., are some other means for water conservation in our day-to-day life. I don't want to prolong more, as I'm sure you are all waiting to hear the proud talk of our chief guest, Sri Sudhir Mohan Sharma ji. As many of you know, he is a renowned scholar and advisor to many governmental bodies on groundwater, water resource management, water security, etc. Fundamentally, though he is a geologist by profession, he has specialization in groundwater, water resource management, and drinking water security. He has served the government of India at the national level as a national nodal officer of the National Drinking Water Security Pilot Project. He has designed more than 400 mega rainwater harvesting projects with areas as big as 4,000 acres to 400 square kilometers, spreading across India, right from Arunachal Pradesh to Gujarat and from Punjab to Tamil Nadu. I'm sure his talk on water conservation, traditional wisdom, and new generation perspectives will be a boon to one and all of the technical persons who attend the seminar and view it later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, the most awaited session of the day. Technical talk on our today's topic, water conservation, traditional wisdom, and new generation perspective by our respected chief guest, engineer Sudhindra Sharma, sir. As Ravindranath sir has already stated, he is a well-known and successful geologist by profession with specializations in groundwater, water resource management, and drinking water security. He is a double postgraduate in geology and applied geology, specializing in groundwater and mineral exploration with excellent academic background. He has also served as a national nodal officer for national drinking water security pilot projects under Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation, Government of India. He has also designed more than 400 rainwater harvesting projects and also the recipient of Best Biodiversity Conservation Award by the Government of Madhya Pradesh and also has been awarded with the Social Award Avas-e Indore. He has been a member of National Recognition Committee India on Water and Sanitation, Rotary International, and also a faculty trainer in Rotary Leadership Institute. He has written the Manual of Sustainability for Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation, which serves as a guide to all the state governments and various departments working on water. He has also founded the project AWARE, that is Action for Water Recharging, which is a Rotary project. With great pleasure, I would like to welcome you, sir, to deliver the technical talk. Please, sir.
Thank you very much for that nice introduction and wonderful invitation. And I'm so glad to talk to people not only from Kerala and Tamil Nadu, but all across India as people will be watching it live on various channels and your channel, of course. So, a very good evening to all of you. And straight away, I would like to share a presentation through which I'll be communicating with you. So, can I do that? Okay. So here I am. We are going to talk about traditional wisdom and new generation perspective on water conservation. So let's start chatting about it. And as you all know, the topic is water conservation, traditional wisdom, and new generation perspective. And this topic is very close to my heart. You know why? Because I am a believer in my tradition. I'm firmly rooted to my basics. I'm firmly rooted to my country. I know how prosperous we are in terms of technical knowledge. I know how rich we are in terms of our heritage. So that is why I always look at all the structures, whatever I see, whether they are historical monuments or they are some buildings or they are some old structures somewhere on the way when I'm traveling somewhere. I look at the water aspect of them, how they were useful to the society in terms of water conservation, how they were useful to, how they are still useful to the society or to an individual or to the country at large or to science at large. You know, because we learned so many things from such structures, such simple structures. So we would like to discuss more about this. First, since this may be an interactive session later on, right now I don't expect any answers. Otherwise, if it had been a live interaction with you, this would have been a wonderful slide. Why water conservation and why I have kept it blank? You know why? Because I like more ideas from my participants, from the audience. But right now, I'm going to discuss them myself. But if we want to fill up the blanks, you know, why water conservation? Why do we want to talk about water conservation? Why at all? So we would like to discuss them. Why do we need to discuss water conservation? Because we understood long back that water is life. As soon as we stepped on this planet Earth as Homo sapiens, or much before that, we knew that water is life because we could catch our food from there. We could navigate through waters. We could travel faster rather than on ground. We knew that if we travel by boat, we reach a particular destination faster. So for navigation, for food, for so many things, to quench our thirst, we knew that water is the only source. We don't have anything else to quench our thirst. We might, you know, we might feed ourselves with so many things: leaves, stems, seeds, whatever, flowers, whatever, or just go for some other food. But for quenching our thirst, we have only water. Secondly, as our needs grew, we found many more usage of water. I'll not say that we became greedy, but of course we became greedy. So we found many more usage of water other than just to survive. And after satisfying our needs, the next step was we found more ways which would make our life easier, which would make our life more luxurious, like taking bath in a bathtub rather than going to a river and having a good dip. We installed bathtubs in our bathrooms, right? So that made our life not only easier but cozier and more luxurious. Then, last but not the least, and that is the most dangerous thing, water was identified and recognized as a tool. We would discuss that also sometime. It was recognized as a tool. A tool for what? A tool for controlling the earth, a tool for controlling the economics of a particular region, a tool for threatening our opponents, right? So water was recognized and identified as a tool. We just saw that in the war between Russia and Ukraine. You know what Ukraine did earlier? Ukraine stopped a particular canal which was feeding water to Crimea. Crimea was non-supportive of the then Ukrainian leaders. So they stopped an entire canal by a concrete wall. And when Russian forces entered, what they did? They destroyed that wall. Because water was a tool. Water was a tool to threaten, water was a tool to make people friendly. So water is still used as a tool. And we talk of world war happening or not happening. Sir, it's not going to happen. It's already happening. The world war for World War III is already happening over water, in fact. So there are at least 180 places in the world where water is being controlled by militaries on both sides of the river or both sides of a lake. There are forces positioned to take care of the lakes and to preserve their water bodies and all. Okay. So we need to understand water again. How do you define water? How do you define? Because if I ask a child, how do you define water? He would say it is something with which we play colors at Holi. Now, if I ask water to an engineer, he would say it is something which I manage on a daily basis to supply to a particular city or to a village. That is how we define water. If I want to if I ask a housewife to define water, she would say this is the most precious thing which I can feed to my family. And believe me, they are the best water managers in the world, housewives across the world, wherever they are, whether in Europe or Asia, wherever they are, housewives are the best water managers. Okay. So different people, different perspectives of water. So many times I say that water is like, water is like an elephant. And if you blindfold yourself and you have not seen an elephant earlier, you would find that water is something like that only. I mean, you catch hold of the the legs of an elephant, you would find that no, it's like a pillar or something else. Similarly, if you want to find out more about water, you have to look at it holistically. Water has got so many dimensions, so many. So what we are going to do today is we are going to go across and find some definitions before we start discussing the traditional wisdom. Water can be defined based on the occurrence. Water can be defined based on the usage, occurrence, usage. Water can be defined based on the importance, how important it is to you or not important it is to you, right? Water can be defined based on social aspects. We have seen in so many places, not only in India, in Africa, Europe, America, social aspects define water to a larger extent. Some people drink sparkling water in states, United States of America. Some people drink tap water. That is how they define water. I need my water to be clean. I need my water to be sparkling or not, whatever. Then water is power. Not the power that we generate from water, but the power that we can wield as a tool. So water is power. Then water is economics. You can define it in terms of economics. The biggest business today is water business. You can bottle water, you can supply water, you can purchase water, you can purify water, you can have an industry which purifies, you can have an industry which uses water as a raw material. There are a number of water intensive industries in the world, right? So water is economics, definitely. And then and then mode of availability. What in what mode is available. So there are number of dimensions of water, and our ancestors must have thought of them. That is why they started thinking of certain structures. That is why they started thinking of water. That is why they started thinking of conserving water or putting it to the best use they can. That is why they wanted to increase the water use efficiency of themselves. We are talking of water use efficiency today. We are talking of more crop per drop. That's a wonderful initiative. But our ancestors were already doing that long back. They were the most efficient users of water because they were not greedy. They could not find other usage of water other than to survive. But we have found many many usage. We are using it in our industry. We are using it for our domestic needs, for water cooling of the entire premises. And we are again super saturating the soil with some undesired irrigation practices, but still we are working towards more water use efficiency. So mode of availability, occurrence, usage, important. That lot many definitions could be there, and much more. In fact, these are just a few dimensions of the spectrum that we can find about water. Then of course, if we want to go academically, then of course water quality, water contamination. There are most dangerous areas, most important areas in water management. Then you got lot of civil engineering into that. Then you got a lot of hydraulics into that. So you can define water in terms of pure water, impure water, water containing fluoride, water containing nitrate, water absolutely free of impurities. How do you treat water? So you can define water and water industry and the water business and just water availability in number of ways. So what we are going to do today is we are going to confine ourselves to discussions on How do we get water? The water cycle, everybody knows that. Surprisingly, I am an old school boy. In my generation, I studied this particular water cycle which you're seeing on the screen in my post graduation. When I was doing my master's in hydrology, I was having my special paper on hydrology, and that time I came across this water cycle. Today, the level of awareness is so good that people, I mean, the kids studying in class 5th or 4th, even they are studying water cycle. They proudly come back home and then they recite water cycle. Mama, we know what water cycle is. Water evaporate. I mean, the vapors come from sea, they get into the sky, the clouds come to us, and then they precipitate. They don't say rain. They use the proper technical term these days. Precipitate. They precipitate. Some of that precipitates as snow, and then the water is going back to the ocean. One very important aspect in this water cycle, which we studied in our post graduation, was the percolation to through the ground to the aquifers. Because then we understood that a part of that water cycle is when the surface water is converted to groundwater. Of course, that tricky thing is not yet explained to the kids, but later on they would realize that this is a very important aspect of water cycle, a very, very important aspect of water cycle. That whatever water we receive on the ground, some part of it is retained by the soil and some part of it is transferred to the aquifer which is down below, and that forms the groundwater, and and the remaining lot that goes to the rivers and streams and ultimately back to the sea. Now what happens in this process, entire process? We have seen this earth, we have seen this earth. If you take the entire geological history of earth, we have seen this earth only for 30 seconds of the last minute. We are that young on this earth. The earth is 450 million years ago. I mean, earth was formed. So we are very new to it. What has happened in between when we were not there on earth was that the entire salt of the earth has gone to the seas for depositional basins, and the sea has become very saline. Now, part of that comes back to us as sweet water, right? It comes back to us as sweet water through rains. And I often speak that is the biggest desalination plant, the biggest free home delivery that anybody does in the world. The free home delivery of sweet water to your doorstep, and that too without any charge. Nature does it. Nature has installed such huge sun for you to evaporate the water, separate the salt from it, get the sweet water, and then home delivery through wonderful monsoon winds or whatever winds you get. And then the clouds come to your doorstep and they precipitate, they give rains to you, they give rains to the rivers, and then the river or the surface water translates it into the ground, and you get groundwater. Isn't it wonderful that nobody sends you a bill for that? Right? So it's the biggest free home delivery service. And meanwhile, what is happening is, as it was already told, that 97% of the entire water is saline. Only 2.5% is sweet, and even in that 2.5%, only 0.9% of that 2.5% is what you see in the rivers and ponds and surface water. So what is happening to the remaining 99%? Remaining 99%, 69% is locked up in glaciers. The sweet water, you cannot go and get sweet water every day from the glaciers. You cannot, right? And 30% is locked up in, not locked up, 30% is available in terms of groundwater. So what is the biggest source of clean water to you? The biggest available clean source of clean water is groundwater. That is why groundwater is so important. So important it is because that is the biggest portion of sweet water readily available to you. What is the importance of groundwater? I mean, you can categorize water now into two kinds of water: surface water and groundwater. The 69% which is locked up in glacier, of course, that is not easily available. That is available to some wealthy people who can actually drag the entire part of glacier through their trawlers, ships, and they can get that and they can drink it, maybe, but not to us. I mean, we have to rely on groundwater and surface water. So that is what is the classification that we have now. Why groundwater is important? Groundwater is available at point of use wherever you are, whether you are having an industry somewhere, whether you are having a home somewhere, you can actually, with the permission of the government or with the permission of the local authorities or with the social permission, if you need so, you can get a borewell or an open well drilled or constructed, and you can get groundwater. So secondly, groundwater is generally pure, potable and usable. Generally, I mean, we do have some contamination, like some man-made contamination, which is called anthropogenic contamination, like nitrates and some other contamination. But we have got geogenic contamination also, in which we don't have any role to play, but earth is made like that, so it enriches the groundwater with arsenic or fluoride or something else, or some iron or something else. And sometimes it's got very high electrical conductivity also, so it's more saline also. So that is geogenic contamination and anthropogenic contamination. But normally, unless and until we want to prove it otherwise, groundwater is generally pure. So that is what is important about groundwater, and that's why our ancestors also got attracted by these properties, and they were to get groundwater when they migrated away from surface water sources. Because as you saw in the initial slide, there was an early man hunting for fish in a river, and they knew that water is not only a source of a source to quench your thirst, but to get food also. So they were relying on water food also. But when they went for greener pastures, literally and physically, then they migrated to inner lands, away from their rivers. And then they were at a loss to understand where will we get water if we are moving away from groundwater. And then they started thinking that water must be there somewhere else also, and then they started digging and found water. And believe me, which is the oldest well on this earth? Where is the oldest well? The oldest well on this earth is present in India only, in Banavali in Haryana. That is designated as the oldest well on earth in Haryana, right? So they were attracted by these properties. They worked to get groundwater when they migrated away, and that is how the story of groundwater extraction began. When we talk about existing water bodies also, like lakes and rivers and all that, we need to understand that groundwater also is a water body. It's there underground somewhere. And the impact of an interaction of surface and groundwater is also to be understood. That is what our ancestors studied very well. And not only studied, they did not write hefty textbooks, or they did not give huge presentations like me. They did not teach people various laws of engineering and physics and hydrology, but they observed how water flows. They observed how water drops down, how it precipitates, and then how it moves on the surface of the earth, how it interacts with the surface, what kind of surface has what kind of response on water. So they studied, they observed for generations, and then they started working for, how to manage this gift from heaven. Actually, they were pretty sure that it's a gift from heaven. God is sending this directly to us. It's a gift from heaven. So how to manage this precious gift? There were no water shortages in those days. There were no, of course not. There were no government regulations that no, you have to do rooftop rainwater harvesting. No, sir. But still, they were clever enough. They were wise enough. They were honest enough to themselves. They were honest to their kids. They were honest to us, rather. They were honest to the new generations, that no, we will not be taking more than what share we have in this gift from heaven. We will take only that. So that is that. With that approach, they understood how groundwater is to be managed. I'm talking about groundwater only, right? A groundwater is a component of hydrological cycle. We understand that most groundwater comes from precipitation. A zone of saturation occurs where all these vesicles and pores, and they are filled with water. There is also a zone of aeration above the zone of saturation, where the interstices are occupied partially by water and partially by air. So that is what is zone of saturation, and wherever the zone of saturation is, we call that water table in layman terms. There is a difference between water table and water level, but that's a finer point. Sometime I may be able to explain that to you. But water table is something which is measured true with respect to the earth surface, and water level is something which you measure with respect to the mean sea level. So there is a difference between two, and then there is a third term. That term is called piezometric surface, because that is not water table. Piezometric surface is a surface in which the water is stored due to the hydrostatic pressure. It's not due to the pores or connectivity or something like that, but due to hydrostatic pressure, it moves up and down, and that's why in most of the hard rock areas you don't have a water table. You don't have a uniform water table. For example, in Bangalore or in Chennai or in Trivandrum, maybe you don't have a uniform water table. You have a piezometric surface. In your house, the water table may be at 50 feet. In your neighbor's house, if he is more lucky than you, he might be having the water table at 20 feet. So that is the difference of hydrostatic pressure, and that is because of hard rock properties. Anyway, so that also was understood clearly. So we have to understand that groundwater is stored like that underground. Now, the interaction between surface and groundwater, we understand there is an interaction, and that interaction is very important. The surface water actually percolates to groundwater, the groundwater is formed. Then, whatever aquifer we have, now aquifer is a layer of rock which contains water. We all know that probably, and if we don't know, we can add to our knowledge the aquifer. Aquifer is containing water, and not only containing, it's having the facility to transport water also. I mean, to transmit water. So hold and transmit water, that is aquifer. And there is a confining layer underground. Sometimes the aquifer is followed by an impermeable rock through which the water may not be able to pass through very easily. So the water table is above that particular rock, and then the aquifer is called unconfined, because there is no confining body over that particular aquifer. While the aquifer below this particular impermeable rock is called confined aquifer. That is confined. That's not unconfined. So unconfined aquifer is at the top, and there is a layer in between, and there is confined aquifer. I'm telling you this because that's got some significance, right? Now, hydraulic conductivity. Hydraulic conductivity defines groundwater flow. Hydraulic conductivity is a measure of a particular material's capacity to transmit water. How much water can be transmitted? It's given by the specific discharge of a porous medium under a unit hydraulic gradient. Unit hydraulic gradient is given by Darcy's law. We all know as part of our hydrology education. So that particular Darcy's law is V is equal to Ki, where V is specific discharge, right? The unit dimensions are given. K is hydraulic conductivity. That is very important. The hydraulic conductivity actually is very important when we do some groundwater studies, and that varies from place to place, and that is not universal for any particular rock type either. It's given in huge ranges actually, and that varies a lot. Okay. And I is hydraulic gradient, that is dimensionless. Of course, the gradient is dimensionless, and coefficient of permeability is another term for hydraulic conductivity. So that we need to understand that the conductivity depends on the particular rock type. How easily the water can be transmitted, that depends on the rock underground, what kind of rock you have. The ease of flow, how easy. The adjacent table shows representative values of hydraulic conductivity for various rocks. You all know limestone, dolomite, sandstone, siltstone, anhydrite, shell. Shell is a typical rock which does not allow water to travel faster. Then there are rocks like basalt, you might have heard, but granite, of course, you must have heard. So whether granite has got a good conductivity, whether the basalt has got a moderate conductivity, but unfractured granites, they don't have good conductivity. So that all these our ancestors also, they understood. They might not have named the rocks, but they understood that the harder the rock, the lesser the water will be transmitted through that. So they identified those areas, and then they designed those structures based on that. That is the point actually. So the geological diversity is beautiful in India. There are lot many kinds of rocks that we have. We have got the brown patch of rocks, which is all metamorphic and igneous rocks, which do not have very good conductivity, right? Then we have got green patch in central and south central area, right, like Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh and western India, like Gujarat, and that's all basalt. That's also very difficult to transmit water. And the structures there, you would see that use the structures there confirm their knowledge of geology and their knowledge of groundwater movement. And the area where you see yellow, they are all covered by sedimentary areas or loose sediments also. There are some loose sediments in Jammu Kashmir and north areas, that is denoted by pink. So these areas are easy for water to move. But as you see, the part in Rajasthan and all, they do not have much of rainfall. So even if the ease of flow was good, the rainfall was not that good. So climate again came as a condition for water conservation and for uh, the design of the water conservation structures. Do you see that? Okay. The time factor again. Now this is again very important. If you got some confining bed or two confining bed or three confining bed, you can see in the picture itself that if you are in the top zone aquifer can be recharged in a period of days and years. But as soon as one confining layer comes in, the time period to get recharged naturally goes to centuries, just 100 times immediately. And if there are two confining beds, centuries go to millennia, 10 lakh years. 10 lakh years is not a big time in a geologist watch, but in terms of real human history, 10 lakh is you're gone. So you have to think of these things, that deeper the aquifer, most difficult it is to get recharged, and that is why you should not draw much from deeper aquifers. You should try to believe and rely on the top aquifer, because that can be recharged in matter of days and years, but not the second and third layer, which takes centuries or millennia to get naturally recharged, unless and until you put your recharge shafts and all, and you think that we are playing gods and we can recharge the groundwater. On the contrary, you cannot recharge groundwater to that extent, that the to the extent you are drawing water actually. So our ancestors, wherever they were, also understood the importance of groundwater for their sustenance. And what did they do? What did they do? They understood that what kind of groundwater situations we have. Today, the groundwater situation is not that good, but in those days, the groundwater situations were good in the entire country. Still, they work for various structures across India. And here you can see a beautiful map from a reliable source. And these are some words on the map of India where the structures were. For example, Taka in Rajasthan, Khadin in Rajasthan, Zing in Ladakh, and you're on Kerala. There were some Keni Panam Keni rather, and Surangam. Of course, those are typical structures. We will see the photographs of them, and there are number of structures in Madhya Pradesh also, like Part, and then the Ahar Pine in Bihar, and they were all beautifully designed and beautifully calculated, wonderfully designed structures. Through years and centuries of observations, they have developed them. So these are all traditional structures that are there on the map for you. Now, the design elements. We need to understand, because we have gone through a bit of geology, a bit of hydrogeology, and a bit of theoretical hydrogeology. Uh, the design elements were soil, rock type, topography, climate. Yes, temperature variations, rainfall periods, rainfall quantity, even rainfall intensity. They were all taken into consideration when these traditional structures were designed or thought of or actually implemented. And there were variations also. It's not that some particular guideline or some particular engineering drawing was issued from a central office somewhere in Mohenjo-daro or Takshila, and they were followed all across the country. No, sir, that was not the case. The case was that they were all custom built. They were all built based on the local information and local wisdom, and of course local observations. So there were variations, and you would find variations in traditional systems from place to place, including the design aspect, the size, right, even the material, right. So, and then the usage, what kind of use of water you have to do. If you are using if you are using water for drinking water, then the structure would be different. If you're going to use it for irrigation, the structure would be different. And then the allied sectors such as fisheries or forest or horticulture, the structures would be different. So this was the ideal, kind of design elements that we had. Then the socio-economic considerations also, whether we are going to use it for the entire community or it's going to be used for one particular individual, the structures were based on those socio-economic considerations also. First is you see this beautiful photograph of a step well. These are called the step wells, and the step wells were built in number of places. I recently visited a particular town in Madhya Pradesh, and I was doing some groundwater analysis for that particular district, and I saw beautiful series of wells there. And I just asked one particular person who built this particular well, and I was told that this not this well you see in the photograph, but believe me, that well in that particular place was equally beautiful. And the person who is in charge of that particular well told me, sir, when this particular person came to the state, those were 300 years ago, the king of that place ordered him that if you want to do business here, he was a businessman, then you have to construct a well for my people. Then only I'll allow you to do business in my state. And that particular businessman, and still it is known as the Seth Ji ki Bawdi. Seth Ji ki Bawdi meaning the Bawdi belonging to the Seth, belonging to the merchant, right? So he constructed it and he built it beautifully well. And when I asked that particular person that who helps in maintaining this body now, I mean the government or the panchayat or whatever, he said, no sir, no panchayat, no government. We as a group of people in the village, we maintain it. And then only we can maintain it. So the community participation was also there. So these kind of step wells actually were designed looking at the groundwater level fluctuations. How beautiful it is, because these step wells actually had water right up to the brim, or maybe about say 2 or 3 meters down when the rainy season was there. But as the summer approached, the water level went down, and that is why they designed it the way that you can step down step by step, bit by bit, and you can get water from there even when the groundwater level was fluctuating. So you can get it from there without using any ropes or without using any buckets or something. Secondly, these step wells are in a particular geological condition where the weathered rock at the top, just below the soil, is having very intense fracturing. You would not find any step well where the rock is hard. So they studied the rock, and then when the rock was intensively fractured, so to tap those fractures extensively, they designed these wells. They designed these step wells broad and wide so that you can get hold of maximum, you can get advantage of maximum number of fractures. And as you go deeper, you get more fractures from top to bottom, and you can get more inflow of groundwater into the well. Isn't it beautiful? It is. It is. And these structures, of course, they were kind of self-satisfying structures also. They wanted to do it beautifully, so they added an architectural element also into it. So this architecture is beautiful, and you should see these step wells in Western India, in Northern India also in some places, in Central India also in some places. But the most beautiful that I've seen is in Gujarat, in Modhera Sun Temple. It's just awesome. You must go and see it. Right. Then Jhalra, that was told in the initial speech by in the presidential address. Jhalra. Now, Jhalra is a typical structure, but why was it built? Why and how it is different from the step well? The objective was very clear. In a step well, the well was built only when the aquifer was there. But in Jhalra, no such precondition would be found. If you study Jhalras, I've done that. If you study Jhalras, you would find the Jhalras at the downstream of a bigger tank, of a bigger reservoir, maybe 5 kilometers downstream. So whatever seepage was coming from the bigger tank, that was arrested in this Jhalra. Jhalra means jhalna. In Hindi or in Rajasthani dialect, Jhalra or Jhalana means percolation. How beautiful it is. So, whatever percolation is approaching your region from that particular bigger reservoir is being trapped by this structure. So, that is why it's called Jhalra. You find that in Rajasthan. Then, Bandhi. Bandhi means smaller version of Bandh. We add e to anything which we want to denote smaller. For example, bandh is a bigger thing, bandhi is a smaller thing. So these bandhis you would find in forts and palaces of central and western India, in northern India also some places. And these bandhis were huge trenches where they collected the entire runoff from the campus of the palace and the campus of the fort. So what is special about this structure? What is special is the size, sir. The size were suitably calculated based on the runoff which is being generated from the palace, and the runoff would depend on something else also. What is that? You are engineering students or engineering professors. You must understand that the runoff would depend also on the rainfall. So whatever bandhis you would see in any fort or palace, that is always commensurate with the kind of rainfall that particular region was having. For example, in a large monsoon area like Madhya Pradesh, you would find the size of the bandhis larger, and in scanty rainfall areas, the bandhis are a bit smaller. So these were typically calculated, carefully calculated, and then they were constructed. So these bandhis are also big example of the forethought and the design that we had. And the accumulated water, again, going back to usage part of it, the usage. It was used for drinking. It was not used for irrigation. They were quite clear about. They were quite clear about it that whatever water we are going to get from the campus is going to be clean. So that is going to be class 1 water. It's not going to be class 2 water. So we can control the quality of that and we can use it for drinking. So we are not going to allow it for irrigation, and we are going to reserve it for the purpose of drinking. Right. Then Bawdi. Bawdi is another structure, and this is a perfect pick of bawlis. They are called bawlis also in parts of Rajasthan. It's a perfect pick. And perfect pick because any Bawdi is not only an excavation. A Bawdi also has a network of drains coming in from different directions and the water converging into the Bawdi. Right. So you can see a drain coming in from the uphill part of it. There is a hill to the north of this photograph, the top of this photograph, and water is coming from that particular drain here with the blue arrow, and then it's trickling down, stepping down through the steps and getting accumulated here. So that particular thing actually transfers the water to the Bawdi, and that canal or drain network is linked to the Bawdis. This is a beautiful pic explaining different elements. And then the steps. I told you that the steps in a particular other structure, that is Jhalra or a step well, were to negotiate with the groundwater fluctuation. Here, in this particular instance, this is not for groundwater fluctuation, sir, because that is harvested rainwater. So what is it for? Then why steps if it's not for groundwater fluctuation? It is to minimize the evaporation losses. Because at the top, when you are having ample water, the evaporation losses will be more with the surface area, but as the water gets consumed and the summer approaches, you need more water. So the total cross section, the plan area would be reduced, and hence lesser evaporation losses. So that is why these steps were built, narrowing down the bottom for lesser evaporation losses. Beautiful science behind it, and yes, good interpretation. Okay. Then takas. Again, I told you that this is about how much rainfall you are getting, how much water you are getting. So in a place like Jaisalmer, a place where you don't have the topography supporting you for construction, or the geology supporting you to store the water underground, to store or to transfer the water to the aquifer. The aquifer is not there. What would you do? You would not let the water go away. What you would do is you would construct a tank yourself and then store water in that. And that too will be used for drinking water. Again, usage, climate, geology, all linked together. So you would not find anybody storing, groundwater in a tank, harvested tank, going for irrigating his or her fields. No, sir. This will be meant for specially drinking water. And that too, you would find takas in those days, not now. In those days, the takas were there only when the site did not support construction of step wells or construction of bodies, or if they had some aquifer, they would go for bodies. They would not go for takas. If they had enough space for some other structure, which we would be discussing sometime later, or maybe 2 or 3 slides later, if they had sufficient space for that, they would not build takas. But takas are only when you have a limited village requirement, plus you don't have facilities to build a bigger water structure. You constructed taka. And then, yes, again, a beautiful picture which shows you a serpentine kind of entry of surface flow of water to the taka. The water flows from the surface because you did not have pipes and rainwater harvesting systems or downtake pipes or filters, sophisticated filters in those days. So what you do is you collect the entire surface runoff, divert it to the taka, but not before you let it pass through a serpentine tube, a serpentine tank, a serpentine entry, so that the water is almost free of impurities by the time it enters the taka. Before that, it circulates zigzag pattern, loses its silt on the way, and then it enters. So that is how the taka functions. That is how the taka collects water. And then these days, they're so useful in Rajasthan and in drier parts of our country, that in some states they have made mandatory to build a taka with the school. They made it mandatory. If you got a project of construction of school building, you have to have a taka. And then they would put a very small hand pump at the top of the taka so that nobody has to enter. And then the kids can actually, the students can actually pump that smaller hand pump. It's a cute hand pump actually. And then you can get water from that. The beautiful concept that's still in vogue, still in fashion there. Okay. Then ahar pine. That was also talked about. Ahar pine is a typical structure of southern Bihar. But we need to understand what was the philosophy behind it. The philosophy was ahar pines. The philosophy is the pines and ahar. There are two components of it. Ahar is a reservoir. As you know, ahar means food. So ahar was the ahar for the fields. Ahar, that is storage. Okay, and the pines are artificial rivulets laid off from rivers to collect the surplus water in the ahar. So there was a network of these pines to get water from where? From the rivers which were flowing in spate, in floods during rains. So our ancestors observed that these particular rivers are carrying water, and these waters are not useful to us. So we should rather collect it in our fields. How would you collect it? You would construct pines and then let it go into ahar, and that is the ahar pine network. Then where to stop that particular ahar, where to stop that pine and construct an ahar, that was where the catchment was broken. And then the next catchment starts. So that was all very carefully studied because Bihar is a flat land. So you have to study the catchment very carefully so that you get equal share from a particular river. And you can give equal water to various consumers or various community people. And this is still managed by a community. So it is constructed at the line where the catchment is to be broken, and next catchment starts immediately after the structure. So there is a bund which stops the water from going on to the next catchment, and then the water is transferred to the ahar. So beautiful concept. And even in times of low rainfall, when the rainfall is not good, paddy requires lot of water. So for paddy, these ahar pines are a boon actually. And you cannot cultivate paddy in southern Bihar if you don't have ahar pine structures. When I was visiting Nalanda and Takshila and Gaya recently, I mean not recently but last year, so I made it a point to visit an ahar pine. I made it a point that I should see this beautiful structures. And then I got hold of this and I could comprehend. I could actually comprehend once I saw that what was the grand vision of people who designed it. Because unless and until you do that, unless and until you have a vision, you cannot design such huge structures, and you cannot have equal, distribution or some calculations of how much water is going to come from that mighty river. Those rivers are mighty. Those rivers are not small rivers. So you have to calculate carefully how much water is to be brought down from that particular river, so that your fields are not eroded. So those careful calculations were done. Okay, so these ahar pines again are wonderful structures. Okay, then Johar. Johar is again a Rajasthan structure, and again Johar is based on the topography. The topography suits a particular structure, and then only that particular structure is built there. If you have a topography suitable for Johar in Rajasthan, or in anywhere else also, South India also, if the structure is suiting a particular geology or a topography, you would not find any other structure there which is not suitable, which has got a failed look, that okay, this particular structure was not suitable here, and still so it was built. You would not find a single structure across the country, I must assure you. So these were all carefully calculated structures. So Johar was built where there were elevated lands on three sides, right? And the four sides, the mouth of the drainage was there, from which the entire the three runoff from the three hills were coming to one particular location, and then there was a outlet from where the water could escape, and that particular place was plugged, and then the Johar was ready. If you go to Udaipur, you would find the biggest lake of Udaipur built on the same pattern. Of course, that's a bigger lake that may not qualify for a Johar, of course not, but that is built on the same principle. You would find hills on the three sides, and on one side you would find the bund of that particular lake, which runs in kilometers actually. So that's why it's a huge lake, and that particular storage of water served for various purposes, including irrigation, because that was huge water structure, huge water body that could accommodate a lot of water. So it was not only for drinking, it was for irrigation also, it was for cattle rearing also, it was for fishing also, right? So that is why Johar were built, and this again is based on geology, because you would not find Johar at places where the ground is fractured. No, sir, they were not percolation tanks. They were storage tanks, right? So they were not meant for percolation. So that is why these Johars are still live. They are still in operation. Okay, then our own Kerala's Panamkeni. I was thrilled. To read about it. I was thrilled to. I not seen this, but I was thrilled to read about this. That we can actually construct a barrel out of a palm tree. A palm tree of 4 feet in diameter. Just imagine how huge it is. And then the entire inner portion of that particular thick palm stem is eroded by means of mechanical means or by natural means, and that goes away. And then what you have is a solid barrel cylinder of about say 3 or 4 inches thick wood, and then that particular barrel or cylinder is inserted into the place where water is down below at 4 or 5 feet. See, we did not have cement concrete in those days. We did not have plastics in those days. Just imagine how carefully they must have observed that what can be used as a pipe. How can you? I'm just amazed at their vision. Their marvelous vision that they could think of the huge palm stem as a cylinder. They can move out. They can actually carve out the entire inner portion, and then you can use that as a cylinder. For what? For putting it atop a particular place where your irrigation water is going away, and you can actually see that the water is rising above because of capillary action. It's a huge capillary actually. So it is rising, and then you can actually see water, and you can fill your bucket. And I'm told by the literature that even today, in lot many religious practices, in lot many social and cultural functions, the rice is cooked, the food is cooked only in Keni water. How beautiful it is! It's heart touching, really. So that is how you actually worship. That is how actually you respect your traditions. You have to link it. You have to link it through some of your auspicious moments. And when you link it through your auspicious moments, then you actually value them. You respect them. You pass it through generations. You tell your son, beta, son, we cook our food during your wedding or my wedding in this Kenny rice. So you have to preserve this Kenny, right? So that is how you link. Right? Okay. Then Khaden, we talked about Khaden also. But the Khaden is again another structure which you would not find where Tata is there. Obviously not, because Khaden is something which actually requires a gently sloping agriculture fields. So people found that if you don't have a river, if you don't have a particular place where you have three sides hills, you don't have. So you cannot make Johar, you cannot make a stop dam, you cannot make a step well because the geology doesn't feel good for that, it doesn't strike good for that. The water will be lost. And secondly, you would find khaden in most of the areas where the water and the soil both are saline. So even if you try to, store water underground, the entire rainwater would turn saline. So what to do? They devised another way. They constructed a barrier on the downslope of the sloping agriculture field. And that is where the particular water got stored during rains. The rains were not very big. The rains were, for example, 6 or 7 inches maximum, or 8 inches, 9 or 10 inches. So what happened was the rains were there, the water got stored, got evaporated in due course of time, but it let the moisture remain in the soil. And that is how the rain-fed crops, low water requirement crops were grown in those areas. How beautiful it is. Again, a combination of climate, low rainfall areas, a combination of salinity, the water quality, salinity of the soil type, and of course the geology, because they knew that the aquifer is not there down below. It's only the soil which is going to support us, right? So water is not going to get saline. Water is going to remain as sweet water above the surface of the earth, and then the crops would grow in that rain-fed area. Wonderful, wonderful concept, right? Now number 10, zinc. Up north, go to Ladakh. There is a zinc. What is a zinc? A zinc is something which stores melted water. And you won't believe, I've seen that actually. I've seen that with my own eyes. Uh, it starts trickling in the morning with the sun, because the ice melts. And then by evening, you got huge flow. And then that entire water is stored there. That keeps on getting stored in due course of time. As the sun rises, the more water flows, and then it gets filled, the zinc gets filled, and one particular point that is used for irrigation. So that is how zinc is being used in Ladakh. And then there is a water official for that. It's called Chirpun. So the Chirpun is there who is appointed, and Chirpun is appointed for distribution of that water, because that's community water that doesn't belong to any particular landlord or particular corporation, as it does now for so many other things. But no, sir, that is zinc is a zinc. It's not a corporate owned entity. So the zinc water is distributed evenly in the community, and the community officer is there. It's called Chirpun. Fine. We got another community officer coming up in the next slides, and you would be interested. You would be amused to know his name, right? Part is something which is again a wonderful structure which is there in Madhya Pradesh, in my neighborhood, and I've seen that empty number of times, and the water is stored somewhere, and then it's transmitted through a network of canals, and it rises up actually. It rises up. There is a flow down below, and you can actually see the water rising up, because the speed of the water, the kinetic energy, gets converted into potential energy, and the water goes up. Say you can go even. I've seen the water rising up even up to 100 feet. So water is going up without any any power or any energy. Okay, fine. So that is part system in our own Madhya Pradesh, and that is a wonderful system which we need to study. Okay. So what we could learn from this? Yeah, I was telling about the particular officer of a particular water structure. You heard about Kul, Kuhl, Kul. Kul in Himachal Pradesh is a diversion of stream from. They take a diversion from a particular stream and then they take it to their farms. In Himachal, the most of the farms are stay farms, terrace farms. So the particular officer who looks after the Kul is called Kuhli, and that is how Kohlis actually came into existence. So Kohlis are nothing but who look after that particular sanctum and sacred structure, Kul. So they are Kohlis. Okay, fine. So this is what we studied. There are a lot many like Urnis and Iris of Tamil Nadu, Kunds of Rajasthan. But why we were discussing that? Because we have these kind of structures. In particular, Rajasthan, we got Jor, Taka, Khadi. In Himachal Pradesh, we got Kuls. Madhya Pradesh, we got Pad, Bawdis, Kundi. Yes, another structure is Kundi Bandara. Kundi Bandara is one structure near Burhanpur in Madhya Pradesh, and which was built by Abdul Rahim Khan Khana. You must remember Rahiman Pani Rakhiye kind of writing in Hindi. Rahiman Pani Rakhiye bin Pani Sabsoon. He was not only a poet, he was a subedar. He was a Muslim subedar, and he had an army of 30,000 people stationed at Burhanpur, and he constructed a structure called Kundi Bandara. So there was a Kundi. He studied the geology of that area, and he was very good at geology. He identified a soft rock patch midway from the top of the hill to the bottom of the hill, and in that particular soft rock patch, he excavated a tunnel all along the hill, running into kilometers, and those tunnels were 11 feet high and at least 5 to 6 feet wide. Entire water coming down from the hill slope got stored in those tunnels. There were shafts going into the tunnels at various locations. His soldiers and the people living in the fort, domestic areas and something, they can get down into the tunnel or they can fetch water from ropes and buckets. So that is what is Kundi Bandara. And you'll be glad to know that Kundi Bandara structure in Madhya Pradesh is still feeding a particular town nearby. They are still running a water supply from that particular structure, which was built hundreds of years ago. Okay, so you got Bihar, Ahar and Pines. In Tamil Nadu, you got Eris. In Kerala, you got Panam Canyon Surangas. Yes, Surangas are wonderful structures. Surangas are structures which get water from lateritic zones. There are in Kerala the typical topography is that you got low hills, though they are very steep, but you don't have very high hills, and there are zones of laterites in between. Those laterites are again the soft rock patches. Just as I explained in terms of in reference of Kuni Bandara, there are patches of laterites and those contain water, and then you drill horizontal shafts into them, and they are called surang. So they are called surangas, tunnels, and you get water from there. So they are still in vogue, still in fashion in Kerala, as I am told. Surangas are again good structures, traditional with traditional wisdom. Ladakh, you got zinc, and Uttar Pradesh, you got stave wells. Now, the hydroscientific properties, they are the most important things actually. Why these were built like this? So we can summarize that. We have discussed that also, but we can summarize that this way also. That in Johar, you got typical qualities of low rainfall, then geomorphology supporting it, three sides elevated terrain. Then in Taka, you got low rainfall, but the flat topography, right? You don't have the facility to store water and higher evaporation losses. So those higher evaporation losses were compensated by putting a top over it, and it was a concealed structure. It is a concealed. Khadin is a gently sloped area with gently sloping topography. Aquifer is shallow depth and saline water and saline soil. Then you construct a khadin there. So these are all explanations of geology and hydroscientific analysis of those particular structures. Why they were built? They were not built as flukes. They were not built at the will of some particular king or some particular moneyed man. No, sir. They were all scientifically calculated, carefully calculated, and designed. Then Jhalras, subsurface seepage from an underground reservoir. They were not having any aquifer, or maybe even if the aquifers are not there. Then Kuls, as I told you in Himachal, utilization of surplus flow of river water, right? Then part utilization of undulating topography. Then Bawdis, the harvesting water from the upslope through a drain network and minimization of evaporation losses through narrowing down via slopes. Then Kundi Bandara, as I explained, Kundi Bandara in Madhya Pradesh. There's only one location, but I given it. utilization of soft rocks patch, just as you do that in Surangas in Kerala. You do that in soft rock patches in Burhanpur, in Madhya Pradesh, Kundi Bandara. Then Bandi, harvesting rainwater from the campus, right? Then Ahar Pines, harvesting surplus water from the rivers and utilizing the topography and understanding the river hydrology also at the same time. Then Iris is again utilizing surplus flow from the river. So this is hydroscientific. Now, what is new? Now, what are we going to do? We need to understand that we have to study topography, rock types and soil types, landforms, climate of the region, water usage, purpose of the water, drainage pattern of the area, and river hydrology to design any particular water conservation structure. And believe me, we are doing it fairly well. We are doing it. I mean, being being from government of India for some time, I understand that there are a lot of worries in the country that we might not be doing what we are supposed to do, or to the extent, but we are doing it, and we are doing it sincerely. We meaning the government of India, the people, the state governments. We are all caring for it, and of course, some people say that we are not doing enough, but we are at least moving in the right direction. And we are moving in the right direction because we have got a systematic, plan of action. We identify the problem, then we got Central Groundwater Board or State Groundwater. Just you got Kerala Water Authority in Kerala, or Tamil Nadu, you got TWAD Board, Tamil Nadu Water and Drainage Board. They're all good friends of mine because, in those days when I was government of India, I used to visit all these authorities across the country. And I got wonderful friends in these authorities and departments. Then we do recognition of the villages, then well source inventory, then we study different maps, which called hydrogeomorphological maps, study of geology and hydrogeology, data interpretation, remote sensing, selection of structures. That is how we do it. Of course, we do that on a much, much sophisticated scale than our ancestors. You know why? Because we have got that facility available. So that is why we have to use the facility. If you got satellites up there, why not use them? You have to. The only thing that you have to keep in mind is the approach that our ancestors had. The approach was, it should be for the benefit of the community, it should be for the benefit of the nation. Nation first, the state first, right? Everybody afterwards. So if it is for the benefit of the community, then of course all your work is valued, and that is how you do it. So this is the new generation perspective, that we have to use whatever we have. Satellite data, satellite maps, there are a lot of information available, digitized. We can process the information faster, and that is why we are going it in a much sophisticated way. Of course, the implementation has to be there, honest, with all honesty, integrity. Then you got a lot of material here, right? And then synthesize all, and then yes, of course, you got geophysical instruments also for site verification on the ground. You can actually get the subsurface interpretation. We'll not go into details of that because that takes a lot of time. We might have 2 or 3 separate sessions for that. Okay, then you can have good approach, different approaches and mechanism for different kind of structures. What surface storage transfer to groundwater, guiding rainwater to the aquifer, or using existing structures. Our ancestors also had all these, but they did not tabulate it like this. But we are documenting it, and based on that, I've written a manual of sustainability, which is still there on the website, that still serves as a guide. Okay, then we can do aquifer modification, we can go for surface modification of the terrain, just as you do for Ahar Pine, or you can facilitate faster recharge, just as you do with some percolation tanks. Okay, then these are various structures based on the river network and all that. If you study river hydrology very carefully, this is a beautiful flow chart which was designed by yours truly. It was designed by me only, that in what kind of structures you can use different kind of structures. I don't have much of time to go deeper into that. This is just to give you an overview that our approach now, based on the traditional wisdom that we have, is much more sophisticated, but we have at the back of our mind the benefit of the community, of course, always there. And of course, we have improved, we have learned a lot from those people who have designed those structures. And this is an outcome of probably that knowledge transferred via structures, transferred via their intentions, transferred via history, actually, to us. I have not got hold of any particular manuscript, but yes, I know the intentions. When I study the structure, I know the intention, I know their thought process, I know how that particular rustic geologist of that particular village must have stood there looking at the sky, that okay, how much rain is going to happen, how much rain is going are we going to receive this year, how much water is going to be received in this particular reservoir. I'm just thrilled at that thought. Vijayanagar Empire or Chola's, tanks, or Chandela's tank in Bundelkhand. I mean, all those tanks really fascinate me. That how could they have imagined that? Okay, so these are all wonderful, wonderful different structures that we can build based on different sources, based on drainage order, based on geomorphic conditions, based on slope conditions, and of course, yes, satellite maps. You can actually interpret satellite maps where the granites, you can actually see where there are ease of flow, where the flow is good, where the flow is not good, where the settlements are, for what use the water is going to be, where the rivers are, where the fractured zones, where to put percolation tanks, where to put stop dams, where to put recharge shafts, where to divert rivers, where to store water on the ground, and so many things. And based on the rainfall availability, based on the runoff availability from a particular catchment, all that analysis is done. If you see a beautiful picture here, and that is from Parali, Maharashtra, where to do contour trenching, where to do contour bending. There are not many structures there, which we have named now contour trenching, contour bending, and all that. Of course, we need to discuss that separately, because we were having our focus on traditional wisdom today, and based on that, what we could do further, right? So these are all some examples of our work that we have been doing. Some lithology controls are there, some structural controls are there, and the aquifers are mapped, and then we can actually identify where to put our check dams and all, right? So this is a part of Jhansi, and that was a part of Maharashtra, and so many examples are there where people are working good. In Andhra Pradesh, one of the officers was using these particular maps for Manrega works and where to dig ponds and all that. It really thrills me to see that these maps are really useful. These technical informations available now are very useful. Okay, this is how we map watershed. This is how we delineate watershed, and then we prepare a map for a particular watershed. That okay, this is the Kheda village. We can build a check dam here. We can actually utilize the drainage pattern, and we can actually attempt to solve a particular water problem of a village. Our ancestors also did the same way. They might not be having those sophisticated maps, but they had their intentions, they had their commitment, and that is what made them successful. Okay, what can you do as a citizen, as a student, as a teacher? Again, a blank slide, but I'll give it to you. Learn more about water, educate others, just like we are doing today. Go to a village, understand their problems, because in the cities you got a lot of resources, but in the villages you need to educate them more. Learn from them also. They also have wonderful mastery over ground water management. Form a water club in your college or school or whatever you have, or even in your housing society. You can have a water club, organize awareness activity, start from your home. Ending with a very short story. Very short story. I'll be off very soon. This is Mr. Bachu Singh. He belongs to a tribal area of Madhya Pradesh, and we went to him for looking at some traditional knowledge documentation. He was growing some medicinal plants for treatment of snake bites, and we were very happy to meet him. We saw his field, and I collected some samples also from him. This is how I looked 15 years back. Okay, so we collected some samples, and I just started talking about water to him, and I explained to him that you can have one open well or bore well here in the field. He has got 4 acres of cultivation. Out of that, he grows the snake bite medicines in 1.5 acres, and 2.5 acres he grows his wheat and maize and all that. So I asked him why 2.5 acres. He said, "Sir, that is sufficient for me and my family. So I leave 1.5 acres, and in that I grow medicine, which I give free of cost." I explained to him getting more water, and he listened to me carefully. But later he took me to this place, 3 or 4 fields away from his field. And then when I saw this open well constructed by him, I was amazed. I asked him, you got such a huge open well. How much horsepower of what motor you have? He told me that it's 2 horsepower. I said, you can put 5 horsepower. You can get more water for for your crops and all, and you can utilize more water out of it. He gave me a beautiful answer, and that is why this story is here. He told me, sir, we take only that much from the environment. Environment means jungle, the atmosphere, the surroundings. We take only that much from environment, the amount what we need. We don't take anything extra from the environment, and that is probably the basis of sustainability. You take only that much which you need. Then I tried to explain him further that you can actually do some more crops which need more water by using more water from this open well. He took me downstream of this nala, this river, and then he told me, sir, I grow my water intensive crops or which need more water in the downstream of nala, because we got moist soil here and we got water flowing down below. And I was amazed at his ingenuity and his creativity. And I asked him, how do you get these ideas? Like, I mean, you're so pious a man, and how do you get this idea? He said, sir, we got one saying in our village, and that translates into English, like, going to the water rather than making it come to you. He says that we have got a saying in the village, in our community, that you should go to water, you should not bring water to you. That is injustice to water, that is disrespect of water. So that is how these people are. I mean, those ancestors were like him. So we need more people like Bachu Singh. We need more people like him. We have got more people like you and me who we are having a Bachu Singh in ourselves. So that is why we are here. We are discussing this, right? So a few simple things. Be vegetarian, do not waste water, change your lifestyle, and use the 7R principle. Of course, we know 4R. The 4R is, 4R is reduce, reuse, recycle, recharge. But what are the remaining 3 R's? I have added 3 more R's to it. And those 3 R's is recharge, restore, rejuvenate, and respect. You have to respect water. You have to respect people who work for water. You have to respect people like yourself who are working for water, who are thinking about water, who are talking about water. So that is all from me now. Sorry, I took a bit of more time, but I hope it was all a good discussion and useful to you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir. It was very interesting to know about the structures ancestors developed for water conservation and the prospects of the same, and also about the 7R principle. That was very informative, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Now we will have a discussion session where the participants can clear their doubts directly with Sudhindra, sir. So I
Wonderful.
welcome the participants to raise their queries. You can post your doubts on the chat box as well.
I'm not going to read the chat box. You please,
Yeah, sure, sir. I will dictate the query.
please, if
Sure.
you see any queries, please communicate, because
Yeah, sure,
I'm
sir.
not very adept at uh, your platform today.
Sure. It's okay. I request the participants to please raise their queries about the same.
See, we
Sir,
need to, yeah. We
sir,
need to
please.
understand, we need to understand that all these traditional structures, they were built with lot of calculations, lot of planning, and years together were gone into that. So lot of materials were used. Selection of that particular material was also very important. What kind of material is to be used for what? For example, you cannot use a limestone rock in a bund, because limestone is soluble in water. So you cannot use limestone. You have to use sandstone, and a particular variety of sandstone was used in all those water conservation structures. Particular design was used. All those rainfall patterns were all studied. So that is lot of science behind it. And my advice to all budding engineers, all budding civil engineers especially, is that you should study more of these structures. You should look at them from all aspects, right from building material aspect to the strength aspect to the foundation aspects. Of course, we have not gone into detail because this is too short a time. You cannot summarize thousands of years of work in 60 minutes. You can't do that, but you can get an overview, and you can, yeah. And I must tell you, this is how a technical discussion is. It should give you more food for thought. Actually, it should urge you to do more. It should leave you hungry for knowledge, hungry for thoughts. You should be more thirsty about knowing more about these wonderful structures. If you go to Chand Baudi, that is on Delhi Jaipur Road, you would be amazed. If you go to the Modhera Temple, Sun Temple in Modhera in Gujarat, you would be amazed. If I go to, I intend to come to Kerala to see that well, which was built all by the ladies. I intend to go to that place, because those structures fascinate me. I mean, the commitment, the passion, the the courage that those people have. The ladies, they constructed that well themselves. It's such a huge well, such a deep well that is, and that's in Kerala. So all these structures are real place of worship actually for me. I mean, they are pilgrimage kind of sites. Whenever I visit a particular historical monument, I look at them. Go to Taj Mahal, entire platform. There are smaller holes there. What are those holes? Those holes actually get into a drain network. That drain network carries the entire water to the surrounding canals and channels, and then that entire water is communicated or sent to the front canal, in which you see in all the photographs of Taj Mahal. So all that is really beautiful. You go to so many temples, and then you find that there are bawdis in those temples. Why? Because those places were linked to places of worship, so that people can remember them, so that people can respect them. Respect is the biggest thing for them. You have to respect. You have to respect water. You have to respect water resources. I've seen people in Rajasthan. You won't believe it, but when they climb up a particular well, they leave their footwear outside. I was amazed. Sir, the water would get dirty. I would not climb the open well with my footwear on. That is how it is. So that particular thought, that particular philosophy, that particular thought process, if we can inculcate in today's youth and today's students, maybe we would be more respectful about our own creations, because we are all engineers. We need to have faith in our structures. We need to have faith and respect for whatever we are doing. We need to have faith in our blueprints. We need to do that. Then only we would be more confident. Then only we would be more successful. Because constructing or getting a blueprint for designing something is okay, but getting involved into that, loving that, love what you do. That's what it is.
Thank you, sir. So that is a good message for all the civil engineers out there. So moving on to the felicitation address, I welcome Dr. Gopalakrishnan Iyer, sir, Coordinator Northern Emirates of UAE, Science India Forum and Swadeshi Science Movement Trivandrum for the felicitation address. Please, sir.
Hello, good evening to all. It's a very nice, very dedicated speech from our chief guest, Sudhindra Sharma ji. So I would like to add 2 or 3 points. So while I was in UAE, I can see there is a very good water conservation program is being done in the UAE government. What they are doing, they are reusing the water. So one of the technique in the water conservation is reuse. So there is a, in each emirate, there are 7 emirates are there. In each emirate, they are using this water, they are recycling this water in different ways. That the water from our bathroom, even from the workshop, these waters are being used for cleaning, for cleaning the road, or even for the irrigation purpose, for agriculture purpose. So there is a very good example how we can conserve the water. Then next is they are recycling the water. That is also I told you, they are recycling the water in a different way. Then desalination. So the biggest, one of the biggest desalination plant we can see in UAE. They are converting the salt water into drinking water or reusable water like that. So we have to look into these new techniques like that. Then coming to the use of water. So the new methods. So what they are doing, there is hydro techniques, that what we can call drink 2 glasses of water in empty stomach. That will reduce your blood pressure. That will be a boost for your energy for the full day. And while going to the bed at the night, drink 2 glasses of water. So these are all the Ayurvedic concepts they are saying. So now we are I can notice that we are using a bad practice that we are drinking the hot water. So look at the universe, look at our surroundings. No animal in the world they are drinking hot water. They are all drinking the normal water. So if you are drinking normal water, we can practice that. We can reduce the sickness, something like that. So that is also another very good technique. Then, so these techniques we can use to evade from our illnesses, and we can have a good health or longevity. Earlier in my children days, in our early days, I can see we used to take bath in the river or even in the waterfalls. So now we are constrained. We are looking in our bathtub. Sir says that we are using bathtub and or in the shower. So these are all the things. We are wasting so much of water. So we have to minimize this. And I can use this platform. Best wishes and all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I welcome Professor J. Kumari V., Indian Society for Technical Education, Kerala, who is also a retired professor and HOD of Civil Engineering Department, Government Engineering College, Thrissur, for the Felicitation Address. Please, ma'am.
Very good evening to one and all of you. Sir, your topic and all what you said, it was extremely good. And we are very, very happy. I was unaware of so many things like what you said today, even our the one which is practiced in Wayanad, Panam Kani, all those things, Panam Keni, sorry. It was really wonderful, sir. And very knowledgeable too. Thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful talk. Like our Ravindranath sir said, we must start everything right from our home. Everything like he said about usage of water. Definitely we should start from our home. And like you said, that last story, we must be very, very humble and use only what we need. We must not be very greedy and go for too many things. I think nowadays our lifestyle is like that. And like what our sir said just before, I think some of the hospitals here, they reuse the water. But of course, they don't use it for any drinking purpose, I think, but they use in our toilet, etc. Altogether, we are very happy to associate with you, sir. I'm representing Indian Society for Technical Education, which is also a platform of engineers, especially both graduate engineers as well as polytechnic. And we are very, very happy to be a part of this. Thank you so much. It was really wonderful, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I would like to welcome Dr. Pavitran G., Member, Energy Conservation Society, for the Felicitation Address. Please, sir.
Respected Dr. Sudhindra Mohan Sharma, Dr. Govarashnan R. Iyer, Engineer Ravindranath, Engineer Ritesh, Dr. Soman, and other distinguished dignitaries. It was a highly informative talk made by Dr. Sudhindra Mohan Sharma. He has illustrated many types of possibilities for conservation of water, and he has discussed on various types of wells. I would like to add a few points also. In most of the rivers in India, it has got contaminated due to pollution and other things, due to dumping of wastewater, etc., into the river. If you are comparing the water quality of rivers in developed countries, you can take bath or even drink water from the river, even which is flowing through cities and towns. We should also try to avoid contamination of river water by proper sewage and other proposals. We should also try to reuse bathroom water for irrigation, vegetable garden, etc. Then rainwater harvesting is also another possibility, which is being done in many parts of Kerala and other parts of India by using rain pits, that is Mazhakkuzhigal in Malayalam. You have to charge the wells also by using the water harvesting techniques by providing suitable pits near such wells. Then regarding the to avoid the evaporation of water from water bodies like ponds, rivers, lakes, etc., we should try to install floating solar stations to collect the energy and electricity as well as to reduce the evaporation losses. And anyway, happy that we had a very highly illuminative lecture from Dr. Sudhindra Mohan Sharma. And I would like to congratulate the organizations of Civilianz, Swadeshi Science Movement, Association of Engineers Kerala, Energy Conservation Society, Kerala Self-Financing Engineering College Management Association, Indian Society for Technical Education, and all well-wishers and all the participants. Anyway, it was a very highly informative lecture, and thank you once again to Dr. Sudhindra Mohan Sharma. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, I would like to welcome Engineer V. Vijay Kumar, sir, Deputy CE, Kerala PWD, State Executive Committee Member, Association of Engineers, Kerala, for the Felicitation Address. Please, sir.
Good evening to all. On behalf of the Association of Engineers, Kerala, I take this opportunity to congratulate the organizers, namely the Civilianz and the Swadeshi Science Movement, for having arranged this talk series on water conservation, traditional wisdom, and new generation. Today's speaker, Engineer Sudhindra Sharma, has done a very commendable work by presenting various points covering the whole subject, especially highlighting the various structures built by our ancestors, namely Jalra, Aharpine, Tonga, Johad, Panamkilini, Hardin, Singh, Pat, etc. The talk was really informative, and I take this opportunity to congratulate both the organizers and today's speaker on behalf of the Association of Engineers Kerala, and I was a former president and current state executive member. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, sir. Moving on, I would like to express our deep gratitude towards our chief guest, Engineer Sudhindra Sharma, sir, for taking time out of his busy schedule to be with us here today, and also making this session so informative and interesting. It was definitely an eye-opener. On behalf of Civilianz family, we deeply thank you, sir, for being a part of this session. I also like to express our sincere thanks to all the eminent personalities in the field of engineering who has accepted our invitation to be with us here today. I would like to extend our thanks to respected Engineer Ravindranath TC sir, Dr. Gopalakrishnan Iyer sir, Professor J. Kumari B. ma'am, Dr. Pavitran G. sir, and Engineer V. Vijay Kumar sir for their graceful presence. Also, I would like to thank all the participants who are with us today. So we are coming to the end of this session. Thank you so much, everyone, for being with us today.